You know, and as much as MTV is some often justifiably mocked, you know, when I think about, you know, the first time I saw KRS-One was on Yo MTV Raps.
Right.
You know, the first time I saw some thrash bands were like Headbangers Ball would always play. It was 3 hours long, and they'd do like 3 or 4 thrash bands per hour. You know, so I'd be all about taping it on VHS and then like fast forwarding through the hair metal to get to like Testament. You know, and dude, a big formative thing for me, the first time I saw Motorhead was on the Young Ones, which MTV used to show. And like, without realizing it at the time as a little kid, that show was informing like my sense of humor, my taste about things, you know, and it was just some random thing that MTV grabbed from the UK, you know.
And it was cool because they had that big hour. It was Monty Python, the Young Ones, and then the comic strip, which was people from the Young Ones doing like different skits. And that's where Bad News came from. They're the band that they started, and then they ended up putting out an album as Bad News, which is fucking hilarious. It's so amazing. Like I loved that show. You got to see not only Motorhead, but the Damned were on there. Dexy's Midnight Runners doing a cover of Van Morrison. Like I remember every band, Madness. They were on there twice. They did House of Fun and Our House. Yeah, it was crazy.
And that show was only 2 seasons.
Yeah, all those bands. And they're the ones who stopped it. Like they didn't get canceled. They just stopped the show on their own, and it was just like we want more. Like what the hell? Yeah, crazy, man.
I wonder. I would love to. I've actually interviewed Ricky Gervais before. If I get an opportunity to do it again, I should ask him if the Young Ones were an influence on that, because he always does the like two and done.
Well, that's a very British. That's a very British thing. Like they're much more into quality than they are into quantity, because if you think about it, Python only did 3 seasons.
Yeah.
I
thought about that before.
They went on to do other things, but if you look at, I mean, it was very much about, okay, we've done everything creatively here. Let's do this. Now let's take this same kind of team and do this. They're very, very very known for like short runs, man. It's very rare that a British show runs for, unless it's something like a soap opera or something like Coronation Street has been going on for years. Which technically is like an evening soap opera, you know?
Yeah.
But that's a different side of the culture when it comes to comedy. Even the IT crowd didn't run that, or the IT crowd or whatever. They didn't run that.
I've never thought about that, man. That's a really insightful point. Because I've known that about Gervais and the Young Ones. I just have known that, but I've never connected all these dots. I think you're onto something big time. Yeah. And it's, you know, whereas in America we'll wear something out and get squeezed every last drop of it.
And I think that's why the British versions of, whether it's even something that the Americans have copied or if it's just an original, that's why I think those stay very relevant and very poignant and very funny, because they do it in this small window and then they get out. You know, they don't milk it to death. They don't pound it into the ground. Now there may be some exceptions, but at the same time, it's very interesting that they strike while the iron's hot and then they get away from it.
Yeah. And you know what? That probably allows us to absorb it and retain it much better. Because I remember like just about every bit from the Young Ones. And it's like, because there's only so many, you know, so
exactly.
Watching the same episode.
Buying them on VHS and then buying them on DVD. And then I just rebought them on Blu-ray.
I bought them whenever, that small window where we would buy things from iTunes. Like, I bought them on, it's like one of the only things I have on like a hard drive TV show wise from that. Oh, dude, so killer. So Metallica, you know, I always say if aliens show up and ask what is Metallica, that the song Master of Puppets is the first thing you play, because that's like everything about Metallica, I think, is encompassed in that song.
Yeah, it's got everything. I mean, it's got the riffs that we all tried to learn how to play, and then, you know, when we eventually learned the proper way to play it, it took us forever to adjust, you know. It's like, but it's got the breakdown in the middle. It's got the amazing melody. It's a journey. It's an opus, you know, like it's you're absolutely right. It represents everything that we loved about Metallica, especially in that moment, man.
Yeah.
Like they were the best fucking band in the entire fucking world, and we were the only ones who knew it. You know, we as fans, like they hadn't blown up yet, you know, they hadn't been taken, and you know, and you know, obviously their career has gone in so many different trajectories, but for so long they were our little secret. They were ours, and they fucking and we worshiped them. They could do no wrong. I can remember reading certain comics because they read them. I can remember skating on certain skateboards because they skated on them. I can remember listening to certain bands because they listened to them. Like it was a cult for a second, man. You know, like Indeed. It was like, that's how much they meant to us, you know? So it was cool to be a part of that. It was cool to meet other people, like you said, who got it and you immediately understood it, because it immediately opened up a conversation, and it would take you into a million other different stratospheres, you know, like learning about Exodus because that's where Kurt came from.
Yes.
You know, like it just learning about all these different bands just because of that one band, you know, like it was such a fucking amazing amalgam of creativity and expression that, you know, Metallica, that song would, if you play that for anyone, no matter what time, but you could play that for someone today and who's never heard metal or whatever, who's just listening to pop music, and it will change the way they look at music. I mean, to this day, that's how poignant it is.
Yeah. And the way that they always would share with the audience the stuff they loved, like past, present, right. You know, like you were saying, I mean, you know, the Misfits, that's Danzig, Sam Hain, you know, all that I discovered because of their t-shirts, like nothing else, exactly. You know? Yeah.
It's like, who the fuck is that band? You know, like everything they wore on stage, you'd just be like, oh, that's got to be something fucking cool. Let's go try and find what that is, you know?
Yeah. And I love, not to put you on the spot or make you feel awkward, but so many things we're talking about, I think Slipknot is the spiritual successor in terms of those kids that were like we were, and how you feel. And then you discover this thing where you're like, oh, here it is, you know? The way that, you know, you are always taking bands on tour and introducing, you know, your audience to different things. And, you know, I think I feel like Slipknot is an example of a you know, big established band that learned the right lessons from Metallica, if that makes sense, about like,
no, I appreciate that.
This,
you know? I've never tried to put it in that perspective, but I mean, you're right. I mean, we've always really strove to bring out not only bands that we like, but bands that we feel like the audience would like, you know, really have tried to change it up. We've always worn our influences on our sleeves, even when sometimes it's almost indiscernible in the music that we're making.
Right.
Always been very upfront about the fact that we all come from such a vast different background that all of those tastes collided to create what we were doing. So but we had enough in common that was the common denominator that helped us, you know, really, you know, make this music. So I guess, you know, you're absolutely right in a lot of ways that we ended up being the ones to kind of pass that forward and try to encourage other band or other fans to really check other things out, you know?
Yeah. And you also, you know, because what you just described also describes them, right? Where there are these four very unique personalities. You have this like worldly Lars, you know, and who brought the new wave of British heavy metal here. And then you have Kirk's background, all the stuff he's into, and horror movies and whatever. And obviously Hetfield. And it's like, you know, Slipknot has that same thing where there are very identifiable personalities within the group that stand out as individuals and yet come together as a group in a special way.
And we make
things you overlap.
which is bigger than all of us. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something that we've always really tried to strive for, is that outside of the group, we're all kind of doing our own thing. We all do our own thing. But in the group, we really try to complement the music and do everything we can for the music. And that mentality transposes over to the live show, the art, the look, the vibe. I mean, everything. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's in the collective, we make sure that the band stands out and not just one of us, you know. And we've always tried to be that, you know.
Yeah, or I mean, and you're also what I describe, and there's, you know, maybe, I don't know, 10 bands that you can describe this way, as like a lifestyle band, where like, if you're a Slipknot fan, like that's your lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like not just like, oh, I like that band. It's like, this is my life, the way that like these bands we're talking
one
about.
One of those bands that you fight for, you know, like you get in fights about, and that's great. I mean, that's kind of what we wanted to be from day one. Was we didn't expect this level of success. I've said it since day one. It's like, we would have been happy to sell, you know, a couple 100,000 albums and just be able to tour, you know, like, and just really build this thing. Because at the time, going back 20 years, that would have been a big thing, you know, for an underground band like us, you know.
Absolutely.
We exceeded not only our own expectations, but everybody's.
And much like Metallica, you know, I had Dee Snider on my Metallica podcast just a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about, you know, Metallica opening for Twisted Sister, and he's very honest about standing next to Mark Mendoza and going, hey, these guys got a lot of heart, but this ain't going anywhere. You know, like this band's never going to make it. And Slipknot had that same thing where it's like, you know, I remember hearing the first Slipknot record and being like, this is insane. Like, this, and it didn't occur to me that it'd ever be mainstream in any way, quote unquote. You know what I mean? That it would be like platinum records. It was too insane, you know. And Metallica had that same thing. So when you were starting out playing early on, what was Metallica in your? And I want to get to, you know, covers that you've done that we've seen, right? But as a kid, were there like Metallica covers happening in those early jams and everything?
With Metallica, I mean, or with Slipknot?
Well, with just you personally, like starting out in bands.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, one of the first songs that I ever learned how to play on guitar was Enter Sandman. You know, and I think it was because that was kind of our generation's Stairway to Heaven. Really.
Yeah, dude.
Like it was or Smoke in the Water. It's one of those riffs.
It's one riff for the whole song.
It's not only that. I like to call it the Guitar Center virus. Yeah. It's like anybody who comes in is either playing Sandman, Crazy Train, Smoke on the Water, or Stairway, or something like that, or Whole Lot of Love, because that's
like the Wayne's World joke, right? The No Stairway. Like, if that movie had come out like 2 years later, it'd be No Sandman.
Right. Exactly. It'd be like absolutely No Sandman. So it's like, you know, you have those gateway riffs where you go, I figured it out, you know? So I sat down one day as I got better at guitar, and I just started listening to, I went back and listened to like the first four Metallica albums, and just started woodshedding and learning all these riffs, you know. And it became a sort of language that you could speak to other musicians, man. Like when you were jamming for the first time, if you started playing, like if you like kicked into Blitzkrieg or something, or if you kicked into Ride the Lightning, you know, and just start if they kicked in with you, you knew you were off to the races, because you don't just learn that riff, you learn the whole tune, and you just go for it, you know. So it was a rite, almost like a rite of passage, like an initiation in a weird way. Like you just like you knew how to do it. So I've played Metallica in almost every band that I've been in. Like it's always just been there, you know. And I mean, from my first sort of real band, Criminal Mischief, all the way up to my solo band, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know you did solo, and I remember Stone Sour did Creeping Death.
Yeah.
It's that's such a great point, man. I never thought about that. Like, you don't just learn a Metallica riff, you learn the song. Whereas if you're Smoke on the Water, you might just know that riff and not even know how this whole song goes. Yeah.
I mean, you have to sit down and really listen to the song and realize that there's like a whole, I mean, it's not just that riff. Like, you can't just sing the song over the top of that riff. It doesn't work, it's weird.
Yeah, but if you put on a guitar and you start playing Creeping Death, like, you're gonna play the whole thing probably, or at least you're gonna know the whole.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing.